Hey everybody, welcome to the GMG review. Today we're taking a look at Hope is for the Dead, the latest of the Psalmcore series of Forbidden Psalm and its spin-offs from Will R.D. And this is kindly sent as a complimentary review copy and is, man, entirely my shit. Right up my alley. Both I would say conscientious read, because it makes a fairly unveiled statement about what's going to cause the next big global pandemic, and also a really fun zombie apocalypse game that focuses a lot on sort of like personnel management, haven management, and trying to like manage your resources while you scavenge for new goods, trade with traders, fight bandits, and the seasons change as you go through a 2-year time period. Even the zombies themselves change. In like a variety of different options for play modes, either head-to-head with 2 havens going at it, co-op running the same haven or co-op running rival havens, and trying to just like get along and survive the zombie apocalypse while you manage your hope, which is your ability to buy omens, as well as your cast of characters. Now, if you've never played a Forbidden Psalm game, these are a sort of like out of the hashtag 28 kit bashing culture that started with Blanchitsu. The idea here being that you use your favorite miniatures. It's all miniature agnostic. You play on a small table service and the game is narratively driven. So you're not so worried about winning and losing. You're more worried about, did I have a cool model? Did I have a fun time? Did I get to play with weird, wacky stuff? And did interesting things happen? So this one is a post our current future, because it takes place after COVID, zombie apocalypse. So think 28 days later, the zombies begin fast, or the World War Z movie adaptation, yarf. Sorry, I'm an audiobook or print-only World War Z fan. Not that there's anything wrong with that movie, it just wasn't the Band of Brothers style thing I was looking for. And this is sort of like in that vein, right, where the zombies start fast, and the infection, fully detailed through the notes of a doctor that you find deceased, and has slid this under his door with his door locked, is based upon your glands, your wet glands in your eyes. It transmits through there, and you have weepers, which is the stage 1 of the zombie virus. Now the weepers will become shamblers as they slow down and start to starve to death. Eventually they might become mutants, and then even oozes as the body breaks down and the remainder of the infection tries to get out through whatever liquids that are remaining in it. And as time goes on, more and more of the population becomes infected, then ages into being like shamblers, and finally oozes. The virus waded deep in the frozen lakes of Antarctica. First contact had been limited but contained. We thought we'd heard the story of Outpost 71. Come on. 31. One of the things that Will's always doing is leaving little sweeties in here for us, references, nods, little member berries, little elbow pokes. Of course, that's a thing reference. And just like bird flu, COVID, and mad cow disease, we refuse to accept our place amongst the animals and the ability of viruses to jump from species to species. It just took one bird to bring it to our shores, and it was over from humanity. The virus really is a unique beast, co-opting the vitreous humor of the host's eyes. The weeping death spread fast, and our already pushed to the brink of civilization failed us. The virus came at the perfect time. The world had appointed fascists with little care for their well-being to be in charge. Our health systems had been gutted. Economic protection was put before people, and, well, the virus didn't accept checks. The good news is the virus cared not if you were rich or poor or young. It infected us all the same. And so there's basically a variety of stages which this doctor lays out here in his death note. Stage 1 to 3 is after infection, you become a weeper. 3 days to 14 days, you're going to be a shambler. You're highly infectious. 14 days onward, you can become a mutant, and even something even crazier. Now, these styles of games are going to have you basically generate a team, and your team is going to be going to scavenge. Now, there's 25 people living in your haven, and they're actually a resource. So if you've ever played video games, like my favorite reference, and I think the most sort of like analog to this, which might give people a point of reference for when I do this review, would be State of Decay. It was an old Xbox arcade game, and you start off as a bunch of hikers who like come out of the woods. I think like a lot like Dead Rising, it took place somewhere in like either like the flyover states in the US, or it was, I think you're coming out of like the national forest in like the Willamette Valley or something like that, somewhere in Washington state. And you have to build an enclave, recruit survivors, rescue people, and manage the people, keep them fed, keep them sleeping, all that stuff. Kind of the same thing here. Basic stuff you're going to need, measuring device in inches. You need a set of polyhedral dice because it'll use them all, D4 up to D20. And then, yeah, there's going to be modifiers for your stats. It's got a 4-stat system. They even give you rules for converting your warbands from other Somcore games like The Last War or Childhood even. The kids from Childhood could grow up and do this campaign if you wanted to as your starting group, which would be fun. And yeah, and then you're going to jump in if you want to not convert something over and make your own crew. I tend to do these games where I make my crew first and I select miniatures second. I have a lot of Zombie Apocalypse miniatures painted up already, as I obviously wrote a game for Osprey. But in this one, like I said, 25 people in your haven. First, you got to name your haven. There's a sweet table for that. D100 tables for all. It could be like Bunker Harbor or Dawn Blue or Safe Port Farm. Just combine 2 of these words at random. You can find lots of references in here too. Salt Burnt, for instance, in here. If you want, I don't know if I want Barry Keoghan in my haven though. I feel like he'd be a real weirdo. Quarantine, I would take Jennifer Carpenter in my my bunker though, for sure. Outpost 31, right? There we go. There we go. We did it. Not just 71. Yeah, so lots of bits and pieces in here that you'll recognize. And then you do the same for each of your survivors. You give them a name. And there's some great names in here, like Ash and Barker, or Sam and Raimi, or Romero, or Craven. There's even, like, over here we got Joel and Ellie, Leon, O'Bannon. So yeah, you're gonna recognize a lot of these things. It's just imagination fodder. Everything in a Somcore game is like a jumping off point, a great like excuse basically to tell your own story, and an inspiration marker for you to then like design the model that's going to go for it. Stats blocking is the same as in Forbidden Psalm. You get 2 different stat blocks. There's either the dump stat version or the kind of good at something, kind of good at something else, and then kind of bad at other things version. And remember, you have nested stats here. So like how far you move during a turn is going to be based on your agility. How much you can carry in your inventory slots based on your strength, how much hit points you're going to have is based on your toughness, and your presence is used for kind of everything skills based. So your +3, +1, 0, and -3 is the dump stat version. I'm quite fond of that one. And you assign each of these numbers to any 4 of these stats. Or the more kind of balanced one is +2, +2, -1, -2. So you're not really terrible at any one thing. For every 5 experience you give a model, obviously they can level up. If anyone dies in this game though, they are replaced by someone else. They're dead forever. They lose all their equipment, and you lose one of the population of your haven. If your population of your haven ever gets to 0, you lose the campaign. Your movement is 5 plus your agility. Your inventory is 5 plus your strength. So if you have a negative stat, right, it can go down to as far low as 2. Same with your movement, or as high as 8 if you have a really high one. And then your hit points are 8 plus your toughness. So if your toughness is 0, you'd have 8. If it was +3, it'd be 11, etc., etc. And if you ever die during a game, you got to make a death save. That's on a D6. You can also become infected. There are multiple ways to die in this, and you can become infected a lot of different ways by making a viral load test against something that's attacking you. So basically, the newer the zombie is, the lower towards an ooze that it becomes, the better you are at resisting it, and your toughness will be your stat that you're going to have to like stop the zombie virus from taking you over and killing you. If it does kill you, immediately become a zombie. A weeper typically. You transform right away, and then you can attack your own guys. Then you're going to roll a feat and a flaw. These are all very, once again, there's tons of references in here, which I really liked. A bit of red on you from Shaun of the Dead. Crew members gain bleeding condition every time they take damage. They keep taking damage. Patient Zero. That was a wonderful book by, oh shoot, what's that author's name? It was the Joe Ledger series, and someone who's watching this will remember it. Joe Ledger was the most like 90s action movie power fantasy shit I think I've ever read. It was like, it was so bad it was good, and every one of them was about kind of like, imagine it's the Venture Brothers. All of the villains were kind of Venture Brother villains, but like turned to 11. God, it's Joe something. Not Joe Hadelman. I can't remember Joe Ledger was the name of the character. I can't remember the name of the author for the life of me right now, but I read all of them and they were great. Patient Zero is the first one. Be a Hero, just where I left it, Burn the Dead, Double Tap, obviously some references to, Zombieland, The Walking Deceased, The Legally Distinct Walking Dead, Cardio, another Zombieland reference there, crew members gain +1 movement every time they move. And you gain one of each of those. And that just gives your character some personality. Now, the thing that I really liked about this, and this is actually something that was also used in Forbidden Psalm Childhood, which, if you want to check it out, I'm reviewing on the Indie Hour next week. We already reviewed it. If you're a patron, you can go watch it right now. The review's on Patreon. But it'll go to all the normies on Wednesday this coming week. Backgrounds are like what you were before the apocalypse. And this is really key to like every zombie apocalypse story. You got to have some kind of story that like got you there. So you could be like a blacksmith, and some of them are really funny because they might be bad backgrounds too. Like for instance, if you're a CEO, you gain nothing because you're useless in this world. Same with a Instagram model, you gain nothing. You have no value in this world whatsoever. But if you're an activist, you get a gas mask. If you're a blacksmith, you get a hammer. If you're a clown, you get whiskey because you're obviously a drunk. If you're a writer, for some reason you have a katana. I'm a writer and I don't know why I would have a katana. I don't own any mall katanas. I'm not Nightwing from Batman, who has real like mall katana energy. But you could also just be a delivery driver and have +1 agility. So lots of fun things here. Another D100 table, and it's just gonna give you a little bit more like understanding of who you are, basically. Hippie, gain antidotes. Metalhead, gain the headbutt attack, strength +D6. School kid, gain a backpack. And then weapons and equipment. So again, you have a limited amount of weapon slots, and this is also going to be required when you go to scavenging. Every mission in this game, you're going to a location to look for resources to try and make it through the next season. And so you're gonna wanna have some spare space to carry stuff with. Now, when you first make your group, you're going to roll for a random armor, a random weapon, and a random item. The initial roll table is different from when the group finds stuff at scavenging. So you can't find like the high-end stuff like police, tactical vests, automatic weapons. But anything you do start off with will come like a full clip if it's loaded. And some of the armors are also just nothing, just like the clothes you're wearing at the time. So you can see here, a 1 to 4 at the beginning. Basic clothes. You don't find basic clothing later on though. So later on when you're searching, you'll find helmets, makeshift armor, leather armor, police vests, and military grade equipment, which gives you an equipment slot on top of being armor 3, right? So the better armor stuff will be when you roll higher. Helmets don't give you any armor, but they can keep you from getting stunned. And then when you're first making your characters, you can get backpacks, first aid kits, antidotes, antibiotics, LED torches, whiskeys, that's a flashlight for Americans, gas mask, and then infection interception, which is like a brief antidote. It's a Zombex, I think it was called in Dead Rising. It's one of those. If you get infected, it can stave it off. Everything holds a slot, so you have to be able to carry more than one thing. And then a huge D100 table for every type of modern weapon you could possibly think of. Machetes, umbrellas, snooker cues, crowbars, your bare fists, crossbows, 200 bats. And then what's awesome is you can upgrade most of your melee weapons to give them like nails or barbed wire, scopes, and increased size magazines. And there's even rules later on for kit bashing weapons together, Dead Rising style, and having like a hockey stick with a chainsaw on the end if you want to fight with that. States and properties, these are all the things that you can have on your weapons to give them special abilities. Things like armor piercing, non-lethal, it just stuns people, like the taser, two-handed, so you have to take up 2 equipment slots, stuff like that. All right, how to play the game. Real simple. Again, if you played a Somcore game before, pretty much the same. Pick a scenario, set up the scenario like the terrain and stuff like that, any stuff required by it to play. All the scenarios in this game aren't scenarios per se, they're the location you're going to search. So if you're searching a hospital, conditions will be different. If you're searching a pub, if you're searching a traffic jam, right? Because there's all kinds of cars all like slammed together when the pandemic happened and the outbreak started. It'll be different from when you're trying to go look in like, I don't know, the local grocery store. So instead of having scenarios that are scenario driven, the location is where you're actually going, and that'll dictate the conditions. Deploy, and then put down your group that's currently going out. The 5 guys will go scavenge until they're gone, basically. People don't leave the enclave until they're required to step up and start scavenging. And then it's initiative, activate a single model, activate the crew members in any order, activate your hostiles, the noise step, and noise will increase every turn and draw more and more models to the table, and then see if the end of the game happens. As soon as you reach 20 people, or 20 bad guys on the table, the game ends, and someone dies. Or does a very long drawn-out last stand, which is fun too. Making tests, the 1's always a fumble, critical's always on a 20. And unless otherwise stated, the DR dice roll, which is your threshold, your target number in these games, is 12. So if you don't have a defined one, you're always trying to roll a 12. Some harder things might be like a 14 or a 16. If you are really, really like infectious, for instance, there might be like a DR of 14 when you get bit by something to see if you get infected and just turn into a zombie. Or if it's really easy, like a death save is going to be on a 6 plus your toughness. So if your toughness is a negative number, it might be like on a 3 and you're really like hard time surviving. If it's on a, or sorry, be on a 9, sorry, you have a hard time surviving, but you increase the threshold range you have to beat, basically the worse your roll is. And then your movement, 5 plus agility, move in inches, real simple stuff. And whenever you activate a model, you can make a move plus an action, which could be like an attack, pick or drop something, make noise if you want to actually like escalate the danger. But if you give up your second action, you can actually reduce the noise by 1, which is cool too. And then combat's simple. Ranged combat is unopposed, but there'll be penalties if stuff's in cover, like a -3. So you're always trying to hit that 12. You're usually adding your presence, although different weapons can use different stats. Like a bow and arrow uses agility, for instance, whereas like a rifle or a handgun might use presence. You'll add your stat to that, try and hit that TN at 12. The TN will be modified, obviously, if you have a, like a thing in the way, like cover or some rocks or something like that, or the model's obscured. And then melee is actually an opposed roll where you attack and then you get the opportunity to attack back. So even if you're being mobbed by a whole bunch of like infected, like weepers and shamblers, you'll get a chance to strike back, although there is a penalty when you're returning attacks. So they might miss you and they're always hitting on 12s. There's no bonuses or penalties ever for monsters. But the more powerful your fighters become, they can start killing people when they attack you too. Models can break combat. You can drag models because when models are downed, you might want to try and rescue them by getting them off the table. So down models will leave the table. If you're downed, if you ever go to negative or 0 health, you become down, you lay the model down flat. If you ever take any more damage, you're just dead, no rolls. If you end the game downed or you're dragged off the table downed, you'll make a death save on a 6. It's DR6 with your toughness as a modifier. And if you make that save, you have to roll on the wounded table. If you don't, you die and you're replaced by someone else from the Enclave, and the Enclave's population goes down by 1. Guys can flee if they take criticals or if they strike a downed enemy. When a friendly model's within 12 inches and turns into a weeper, so you might freak out and run away. And then noise is created every time a ranged weapon without silent goes off. Whenever a model fails a scavenge roll, try to break into a scavenging thing because you're making noise like rustling around. That was a thing from State of Decay too, actually. And if a scenario condition is met that makes noise, and whenever an action a crew member uses makes noise, it might specify that it does. For every 10 models on the table, period, you always generate noise because it just becomes noisier and more crowded. And for every barking model, because there are barkers, models that are coughing because of all the liquid in their faces, the noise level automatically goes up by 1 as well. So there's noisy zombies. We get some fiction in here about the drillers that find the mastodon corpse or whatever. And then we have hope. Now, in previous versions of Somcore games, you had what were called omens. They're like once per game feats, and they're all the same as these, actually. Deal max damage, reroll yours or someone else's dice, remove a down model and pass your death save automatically. They crawl away. Cancel a crit or a fumble, automatically pass a task like jumping morale or something like that. Auto pass an infection roll, reduce the noise by 10, or have a decoy escape and get away instead of dying. But your hope starts at 6, and it's a finite resource in this game. So instead of increasing, there are ways it can go back up based on the activities and stuff that happen back at the Haven, but you don't get them back between games. So you have to be way more choosy about spending hope as like special powers and events. And then scavenge. You're going to scavenge. If you fumble on a scavenge, you cut your hand on something, take a damage. If you fumble looting an infected model, you automatically have to make an infection test because they might bite you or something on them might stab you and you might get infected. All right, hostiles have a flow chart for how they attack. It's usually near a model they can see, or if they can't see, they idle. It's pretty simple. They'll move 2d6 if it's not specified how far they move. Weepers in the beginning move d6 plus 6, whereas the Shamblers only move d6 to get lower because they can't see, they blind out. The infected never make morale tests, but other things like bandits, animals, wild animals, they might run away. So pretty simple stuff. Again, if you played these Somm games before, it's pretty much the same. And then the infection. So if you get 20 infected models, you pretty much maxed out what you're going to need. As soon as there are 20 on the table, the game ends. And one model has to be sacrificed as a decoy to lead them away while everyone else escapes. Now, there's 2 things you can do with decoys. They can either automatically be killed and lose all their equipment, or you can play a last stand mission, whereas all the other models are removed, and the decoy can fight everything on the table until either they're all dead or he's dead, which is a fun way of being like, I really like this model, I think they can make it, and just have them like fight until they die. There's rules for becoming infected, and the times you'll do that is if you get critically hit by an infected model, if you roll a 1 when you're fighting one in melee, and there might be specific means of doing it as well, or if you roll that 1 when you're scavenging and looting an infected dead body. When you're infected, you basically either have a turn, a D4 activations to see what happens. So 1 to 4 times that you get to go. On the 4th one, you turn into a zombie. But you can amputate your own limbs, you can take the Zombex, the infection intervention, otherwise you immediately become a Weeper. And you count as being a bad guy on the table. And then there's rules for increasing the difficulty if you want as well. So there's a whole bunch of ways you can add to make the game a little bit harder if you want. And you can choose and pick whichever ones you want, but it could be like reducing their movement, increasing their movement, spawning less zombies, increasing their death saves to 10 instead of 6. And then when you spawn them, there'll be rules for placing them on the table, usually at the center point of like a random table edge. And depending on what year of the campaign you're in, you'll see it predominantly favors Weepers and Shamblers in the beginning. Barkers, Putrefaction, which are the ones that are starting to rot. They're like the bloaters, basically, in The Last of Us. Mutated, which are like the big like spiky arm guys. They're kind of like the tyrant from Resident Evil. And then the Vitreous Oozes are the ones that turn into like just sludge. And then they become, the Weepers become less common in year 2 because everyone's infected now and they're all transitioning into the other forms. The viral load is the TN, right? So Vitreous Ooze, if they attack you or you roll a 1 when you're fumbling against them, it's a 16 you have to beat to try and not get infected. Then we got stats for them, their hit points, their morale, they all dash for the undead. So your Weepers, Shamblers, Barkers that make noise, Vitreous Oozes, Bandits, and Rabid Dogs. So these are some of the things that could be at the bandit camp and are non-humans. They'll have random equipment that you can actually loot too, like a hunting rifle and a police vest, or like baseball bats with no armor. And you can steal all that stuff, and it's actually a location, the bandit camp, that you can go and like try and fight at. Rabid Dogs, the Putrefaction, so you have the big like bloaty guys. And then the Mutated. This is the final stage of the virus before they start to melt. Big, weird, eye-covered, extra arms and stuff. And then I do like this. So this is a infected animal thing. They obviously jumped from animals to humans, this infection did. So they give you rules for all that stuff. Infected bears, dogs, goose, rats, pandas, and raccoons. Bodmin Moors, cows, crows, badgers, pigs, and rhinos. But no sheep. Come on, man. There's been so many sheep zombie movies. Give me them sheep. Give me that as a bonus rule. And then some outlines for playing it either solo, co-op play with one haven, co-op with multiple havens, versus play, and then more players like doing multiplayer scenarios. Again, it's kind of one scenario to rule them all from like a setup point of view, and then you roll on the location table, or you can pick, and it'll show you what the hostiles, the hostiles are on here. So in year 1, the hostiles in the hardware store are infected. In year 2, it's bandits because they clear them out and set up shop. In year 1, the police center is Weepers, then turns into Shamblers. In the military center, it's infected bears, and then Barks are in year 2. Bandits in the bandit camp in the beginning, and then infected because they all die and get run out, which is really cool. So like even playing like the 16 games you would play to complete the campaign, it's different in the second year completely, and you're playing 2 games in every season. So when you play the campaign, you're going to do your campaign scenario rewards after you play a game. You'll have at least one member make it off. You get 5 food. And at the end of every season, there's 4 seasons. You need 1 food for every 2 members in your haven. So if you have the 25 you start off with the entire time, you need to generate 13 food to feed them all, or you have to expel people or they start to starve. For every 5 XP you gain, you can increase a stat by 1, reroll a flaw, or gain a new feat. And then after every 2 scenarios, you move the season forward. And it's going to be spring, summer, autumn, and winter. I would D4 to see which one you started and then just play them in order. And there's 6 different effects that can happen throughout the course of it, like heat waves in summer. Models can't do 2 activations or 2 move activations in a row in this scenario. Or in the winter, frostbite. One of your crew suffering from frostbite, their toughness goes down by 1 or they miss the scenario. So lots of random things can happen over the course of the year. We have our injury rolls. If you make your DR test for your death save and you pass, then you gotta make one of these and you see what your additional things are. So like you have a hidden bite, gain the hidden bite flaw, you might turn. Missing eye, max a range of -3 inches for all your range attacks. And then there's rules for increasing and building your haven. You can purchase upgrades for your haven after each scenario. So 10 food takes up 1 equipment slot. Each haven can only have 1 upgrade of each type, and every haven starts with 10 food. You're trying to find food at the end of each game. You get 5 food if you complete the scenario, and 1 person gets back at a minimum. You can upgrade it with things like an ammunition manufacturing station, and there are additional things you'll find on the loot table. So you can see when you roll for this, you might find resources, things like wood, a defibrillator, steel, nails, cloth. All of these are used to make upgrades, like a medical tent or a pub or a gunsmith needs wood and steel. And then we have all of our weapon upgrades that can be made with that stuff too. So nails can add the cruel effect to a weapon. A scope, if you can make one, increases the range of a weapon by 3 inches, and it's found in some locations. They can be applied as well. And then mashing up weapons. So how you put weapons together can make things happen. So like you can make a flaming death. A weapon plus whiskey adds the burn property to it. A nail gun, a ranged weapon plus nails adds the cruel property of the ranged weapon. Exploding ammo, arrows plus a grenade, single use, arrow becomes D12 damage and gains explode. So you can full on do the Dead Rising like kit bashing of weapons together. Now, between every season, the trader shows up. So there's no buying anything typically. Every 2 games, though, you can trade like items you have for stuff. So a full stack of ammo can be traded for like another item, or like ammo. You can trade 5 food for any 1 piece of equipment. You can't take makeshift weapons and armor, though, and you can't take anything that's been kit bashed. He won't take those weapons. He doesn't know what to do with them. Anything else you can trade type for type. So like a 1-handed melee weapon can be traded for another 1-handed melee weapon, 2-handed for a 2-handed, etc. And then there's rules for if you want to keep playing. If you want to keep playing year 3, like what would happen and how the zombies would spawn. And then we've got all of our locations, the medical center, the police center, the hardware store. And some of them even evolve by year. So the pub in year 1 is different from the pub in year 2, right? It's going to have a scenario for co-op and solo only. The mall, the bandit camp, you can go on raids. And then we got our rosters and our quick reference sheets. The cemetery. And then lots of card counters. If you want to play this with counters, just to get yourself playing. And our thank yous. And a thank you to all of the Kickstarter survivors. So everybody that backed. Very, very cool. Love this. Very much my thing. I got all the models to play this already. I think this is a great add-on to the Somcore series. And Will did a great job. So big thanks for him sending this along. And you guys for watching. I do think this is one of those games where what's been pulled essentially out of this is a lot of the fun of the resource management of a survival situation. So while there isn't a lot of the human interaction stuff that is kind of like the core drama in like zombie movies, like people fighting with each other, their beliefs and stuff like that, there is a lot of the like, well, what is the logistical challenge of trying to keep everybody fed, warm, taken care of, and like where do you go and what do you encounter when that happens? So I do like the fact that this isn't a traditional zombie apocalypse, right? We have our like Left 4 Dead style zombies that like evolve over the course of the year. We have infected animals and stuff too. So it makes, if it's just zombies, zombie games can sometimes suffer from the like, well, if the other people aren't the bad guys, we've got one antagonist and they're very like reliably predictable. This one inserts a little bit more chaos. And yeah, I think that's a good thing for this kind of a game, especially for a tabletop miniature game, especially for a kit bash game like this. So definitely excited to add this to my repertoire of zombie games and to bust out my modern zombie apocalypse collection to give it a try. And yeah, and thanks guys for watching. Thanks, Ash. Have a good day.